Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. It's Pat DiCerbo. The most fascinating podcast in the world. Has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the people that agree to speak to me. And today, I think you're in for a treat. Mark Walsh is definitely one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. He's versatile, he's funny, he's smart, went to Union College, which is worth something, and we hope it continues to be worth something. And welcome, Mark.
Great to be here, man. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for accepting. I'm really looking forward to it. So as I said before, you've done a litany of things and I could read them off, but I'd rather just start asking questions. And What I normally ask is about your earliest memories, like when you were a little kid. Where did you grow up? What do you remember from when you were 4 or 5 or 6 years old?
Okay. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, which I'm a Baltimorean. Baltimore's taken a lot of hits from the media over the last couple of decades with The Wire, if you remember that show, Homicide, Life in the Streets. HBO had a special 2 years ago called We Own This City about police corruption. So, but if you don't live in Baltimore, and if you listen to the current administration, Baltimore is a hellhole filled with automatic weapons fire and drugs being sold to 7-year-olds on every street corner. It was a lovely, lovely city then, and I still love my hometown. I grew up just outside of Baltimore in a beautiful leafy suburb called Ruxton.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in a small house with my parents and older brother until I was 4. Then we moved to a lovely home in Ruxton, which was, some would say, the Greenwich of Baltimore, although maybe that's kicking it up a little bit too much. But it was fantastic. So to your point, I had an idyllic childhood. I could ride my bike anywhere. I had friends in the neighborhood, staying out till dinner, all this stuff that tragically is no longer available to young people because of the way that most families are structured now as far as concern for safety. But, you know, we'd go out on the weekend and go play with my buddies and go play we had a couple of acres and into the forest and all that just stuff out of a novel. My dad was in the advertising agency business. He was Mad Men, although he didn't smoke cigarettes and sleep with his assistant, as far as I can tell, which is what that show's about. No, seriously, he was a very, very loyal dad. Came home at 6 o'clock. He was a cook. He cooked meals. So from the very early age, I remember my father cooking very delicious, exotic meals. My mother could not cook. And my brother and I, my brother's 4 years older, we learned that at a very early age. She would cook us breakfast for school. My brother and I went to the same school. It was a boys' school in north of Baltimore. And she would serve us pancakes. For those not watching the visual, I'm putting the word pancakes in quotes.
Mm-hmm.
They were sort of lumps of dough that had a lot of grease and weren't that healthy. So we had a good team, the 4 of us. And I'll finish with a couple of other observations. I did not know any of my grandparents. Both of my grandfathers were gone by the time my mother became an adult and my father became an adult. Both of my grandmothers I met when I was very, very, very little, but they were both dead by the time I was 2 or 3. So I have no grandparents. I had no uncles or aunts. I had a number of cousins of my mother that all lived in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, or Youngstown, Ohio. If your viewers or listeners know, those are very hard scrabble cities with tremendous economic challenges in those cities. And my dad was from Manhattan, from a really, really, really very poor upbringing in Manhattan with really basically no family. So it was just the 4 of us and kind of a single unit in Baltimore, carving out a life. And as I say, I went to the same school from kindergarten to 12th grade, St. Paul's School for Boys in Brooklynville, Maryland. Our mascot was a Crusader, which now, as I get older, I realize was a homicidal religious zealot. But that's okay. He served as a mascot for our school. And my older brother we had a great relationship. He's 4 years older. He was a tremendous athlete, real star in school. I'll finish with this. Going to the same school, small school, there were 38 guys in my graduating class, going to a small boys' school with an older brother who's a real star. I mean, he was All-American, high school All-American lacrosse player, went to Harvard. Um, that can have some challenges. I don't know if some of your listeners will identify with this, but being second in a stack, and the lead dog is very impressive, can be a challenge. So, as maybe you're sensing my personality, I had to be verbal. I had to, carve out some attention for myself within the family. I had to have a different personality than my brother, and I do. He's a doctor. I am not a doctor. And we had complementary personalities, I would argue. But I have many, many wonderful early memories of as a child, and I cherish that. I think so many Americans, so many citizens of the world actually were not blessed with that, and I really count my blessings on that score often.
That's great to hear. I feel the same way.
It's a real benefit. It's a real gift. Don't you agree?
I do. I mean, I was a little bit of a malcontent as a kid. I was an unhappy kid, but it wasn't because of my circumstances. I mean, I had two parents that loved me and four of the best brothers you could ever hope for. I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and it took me a long time to think in a way that wasn't like depressive over the years. But one thing that we have in common, and there are many, but we had a lot of freedom as kids. We rode our bikes everywhere. And I was talking to someone else recently on this podcast about that. And the question I have is it that the circumstances are different, or is it just that the parents are different? And is it the media telling us there's more danger, or is there really more danger, or is it make believe? I don't know. I feel like you're a keen observer of media.
I appreciate that accolade. I think the answer is yes to kind of all three of your scenarios there. I think clearly social media and the preponderance of media, so many channels of media to quote inform us. I mean, versus you're younger than me, but growing up, it's three channels, right?
Yeah,
you had your
it.
local papers. You had three networks. So if somebody was abducted from a neighborhood, far away in Baltimore, maybe I heard about it, maybe I didn't. And so the preponderance of media, the access to media, the 360 element of media, the 24/7 element of media being part of your life. I mean, if you think about it, those not just listening, I'm holding up a mobile phone in my hand. That's a supercomputer in our pocket, and that device, the access to information, is just literally beyond anybody's calculation in 1971 or 1965. So that's answer A. Answer B is I think to an extent there's a little more danger. There's just more people. I think also there's more unhappy people that are misguided. I think there's significantly more people who come from really broken homes and have all sorts of horrible demons in their brain that can act out. And then I think I'll finish with this, which was your first scenario. Is I think parents have those two features. They think the world's filled with more demon-oriented people, and the media is telling them there's a lot of bad stuff happening. So they get more paranoid, and they say, Johnny, you're going to play within 10 feet of the house, or have your friends over, or stay where I can see you.
Mm-hmm. So you guys used to ride your bikes wherever you wanted?
I had a banana bike. I remember that. I had the big extendo, and it had a stick shift, believe it or not. The gears were actually a stick shift from the center of the bike. It was a badass bike.
That's so cool.
Yeah, wasn't that cool? I agree. It was a really cool bike. And the neighborhood I was in had all these windy roads and up into various houses and pools and people to visit. So there was that. The school I went to, I mentioned this, the boys' school, we were close to it. So you could go play in those fields and play in the gym and shoot. And then my mother taught actually at a girls' prep school, boarding school, right nearby called St. Timothy's. Very shishi. Students were from all over the world and from fabulously wealthy families from Manhattan and stuff. And the campus was like a college. I mean, I got to tell you, bro, you and I know Union College. The campus for this school was like a mini Union. Fantastic campus. So as a faculty kid, we were able to. They had a giant swimming pool and 12 tennis courts. It was like having your own country club during the summer. So we did not lack for opportunity to recreate, as they say.
That's fantastic.
It was a good deal. My mother taught theater. My parents are
Mm.
very theatrical. They started
Mhm.
a theater in Baltimore called Center Stage. If you know that, it's a very, very well-known theater. It puts on a lot of stuff on its way to Broadway. They were
Mhm.
very involved in Theater Hopkins, which is Johns Hopkins University Theater. They appeared in shows. They were actors too. They appeared as actors in shows at Hopkins and Center Stage and a whole bunch of other stages and theaters around Baltimore, Vagabond Theater and Everyman Theater. So I was either in plays with them or watching them be in plays a lot. Or in the case of my mother, I was being directed by her because I was in plays at St. Tim's and other arenas.
That's fascinating. What good training for life.
Oh,
I
dude. Not to jump ahead, but I was
Mhm.
a TV out of college.
Mhm.
I got a job in West Virginia at a CBS television station, CBS affiliate television station. I started in selling advertising, but then they promoted me to be an anchorman, and then I became news director and anchorman. And we didn't have a teleprompter, so I would rip the stories off the UPI machine, little
Mhm.
printout, little yellow paper printout of the news stories of the night, and I would order them and have my whole show ready to go half an hour at 6 o'clock.
How
Newsline
much time
5,
did you have to prepare?
routinely half the stories I was reading on the air live on WDTV's Newsline 5 at 6 o'clock, I had never read before.
I,
So for the first time, I'm reading them like right now. I'm looking. I
Mhm.
can't help myself. I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at the lens. When I see a lens, I look at the lens. I'm just trained from. It's true. When I'm 21,
Mhm.
I stare
Sure.
into a lens. So I would look at the lens, look down, get a bunch of text into my eye and cortex, look up, repeat the text into the lens with some emotional fervor and sort of gravitas, and then have to go down and find out where I was visually on the sentence, and then get the next half sentence. That is way harder than it sounds.
Oh yeah. No,
And
that's Navy SEAL level. I do a lot of public
uh,
speaking, and that is hard. Really hard.
so, and then just to your point on public speaking, I had a bunch of I had a weather at one point I did news, weather, and sports by myself. So then I controlled the entire half hour. But I had a weather guy for a while. It was a joke. It was a real affiliate station though. We got into 5 states: Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. I actually was
Mhm.
pulled over by a Pennsylvania state cop driving to Pittsburgh, and he's like, "I know you. I watch you in the news every night." But he still gave me a ticket
Oh
anyway.
wow.
But at the end of the half an hour, if I was out of stories, the cameraman would lean from the side of the camera and go like this, which is stretch, and I
Mhm.
would have to make up an editorial on the spot to fill the extra few
Wow.
minutes on the half an hour. So that's good
Mm.
training.
You're a black belt in what would you say? Rock on tour?
Well, making shit up is a technical
Yeah.
term in TVs,
Yeah. Yeah. But you're better than that. You're not just making stuff up. So before that, you decided to go to Union College.
I
How
did.
did you end up deciding to go? I'm always curious as to how people decide on college.
So, um, believe it or not, my school had sent people to Union from both my brother's year, 4 years ahead, actually even 5 or 6 years ahead. It's very small classes. So each year there was typically one or two guys that had gone to Union, and the Union sent down actually a recruiter to my school. That back in the
Did
day,
you go to St. Tim's as well, or no?
no, I went to St. Paul's school. That was all
Okay,
boys.
got it.
St. Tim's was all girls.
Okay, got it.
Um, and so they sent down a recruiter, and he was an incredibly engaging guy. He was a young black guy, which by the way stood out in
Mm-hmm.
1972. That a
Mm-hmm.
school would send down an African American recruiter to the Middle Atlantic states, to a basically white all boys school. We had some African American students, but it was a predominantly white school. Not that I'm proud of
Mm-hmm.
it, but it was. And he just was really, really engaging. So I decided to apply because the people I knew that had gone the years before me were really cool guys.
Mm-hmm.
So as it turns out, 2 of us went from my class of 38 guys. Two guys went to Union, a classmate of mine and I, and then 2 more guys the year after. But anyway, so I had my brother went to Harvard. I applied to Harvard and Yale and Brown along with Union,
Right.
and I was waitlisted at Harvard and Yale. And the admissions director at Harvard, who would become a friend of my brother's, reached out to me and said, "Don't worry, you're on our super duper wait list, which we keep all summer. And then in early September, there's always a dropout or two. So, and you're number 1 on the list. So you're going to go to Harvard." So the whole summer, because I didn't get into Brown. And I wasn't taken off the wait list. I was not taken off the wait list. So whole summer I was like, well, I'm going to Harvard. I wouldn't really tell people, but I was like, yeah, whatever. And then like September 1st, the guy calls me up and says, for the first time in my career at Harvard, no one dropped out. So you're out. So I'm like, Union, here I come. First time I saw the campus was when I arrived freshman year.
Wow.
But I had a lovely experience at Union. I made obviously lifetime friends, as I know you have.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have both been engaged in the institution for a number of years at all sorts of ways. I owe the place a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll finish with this. I owe it a lot because it put up with a lot of shenanigans from me, and I think that I appreciate that Union had a broader viewpoint of how a schmuck like me might contribute, not only when I'm there, but perhaps later in my life, which I've been trying to do.
No doubt. I feel like I owe the school a lot too. When I was in high school, I used to wrestle there. They had international wrestling. Yeah, freestyle and Greco-Roman. They sent, I think, 8 people to the Olympics or world team, but it wasn't a union program. It was just on campus. So it was an international program that they let us wrestle in alumni gym upstairs. Do you remember that space?
I was going to ask where. Yeah, in the gym. Okay, not the field house, obviously. That'd be crazy.
No, it's now Brazano Fitness Center, but upstairs there.
Yeah.
But so I used to go on campus, and my grandmother had worked there, and my mother worked there. And then I got into college, went there, ran cross country and track, took 3 terms abroad: Barbados, Mexico, and Spain.
Stop.
And I speak Spanish. I met my wife there. The union provided me with a lot of bounty.
Wait. You took 3 trimesters abroad? Yeah. What was it? Barbados? What else?
Mexico and Spain. So if you'll indulge me, I'll tell you this story.
Please. It's your show.
So do you remember Professor Bill Thomas, the language professor? So he made his way around the fraternities, yours and mine both. And he was some kind of an advisor to us. He was like our fraternity advisor. He always came to our Christmas party. And freshman year, I met him. Sophomore year, I went to his office and said, I met this professor and his wife, or both professors, excuse me, George and Sharon Gemelch. And they were sociology or cultural anthropology professors. And they had this, it was the first term to Barbados. And they said, you should see if you can get in. So I went and talked to Professor Thomas, and we had a relationship already. He said, yeah, I'll see what I can do. And I ended up getting in and going. So the next year, this woman that I knew quite well, her name is Jennifer Small, graduated with me. You know Jen. And she says, you should go to Mexico. And I said, well, I already went to Barbados. I don't think I can go again. So I went to talk to Professor Thomas. He said, no, you can't go again. One and done. And I said, well, does anyone ever cancel? And he said, no, not really. And I said, well, just in case, can we make a cancellation list? And he said, okay. And so he put my name on the cancellation list. And like December 23rd, he calls me, because remember, we're off from Thanksgiving until after New Year's, right? So he calls me, I'm getting ready for Christmas dinner or something. And he says, you're never going to believe it. Someone canceled. He said, do you still want to go to Mexico? And he had told me you have to take Spanish 10 just in case someone does cancel, which I did. And I said, sure, I'll go. I literally packed up and left before New Year's.
Hilarious.
And went to Mexico. And then the next year, another friend of mine said, there's a Spain term abroad. And I said, well, I don't think I can go. I went on 2. And so I went to talk to Bill Thomas, and he said, no, nobody goes on 2. Nobody goes on 3. And I said, well, remember the cancellation list? And he said, yeah, but that's just not going to happen at Spain. And I said, just for fun, can we do a cancellation? He said, okay, fine. Sure enough, between Christmas and New Year's, he calls me. He's like, you're not going to believe it. Someone dropped out. And so I went to Spain. And that was when my Spanish got a lot better, to the point where when I saw my Spanish teacher from Mexico, Pilar Moyano, back on campus, and she thought I was kind of like a moron incompetent, which is pretty much true. But I practiced a lot, and my Spanish got very good. And she said, I think you're Spanish. You're a much better student now than when I knew you, is basically what she
Right.
said. And I use my Spanish every day. If I'm in.
So wait a minute. The only winter trimester you spent in Schenectady was your freshman year, correct?
Yes. Yeah. That's why
That's wild.
I'm not in any composites for my fraternity. Isn't that funny?
Maybe
So
that's a good thing.
Yeah, my kids don't believe me. They're like, you didn't.
Yeah.
My fraternity house is torn down, Delta Phi, and I'm not
Yep.
in one composite. But I have the composites here, and all my friends are in it, which is all
So
I care about.
DeFi, what drew you to DeFi? Because that you and I both belong to, we're in the Greek system. What drew you to DeFi?
There were a lot of athletes. I was an athlete. I was, unfortunately, well, I don't have big regrets, but I drank a lot. So my athletic career ended at indoor track. I ran cross country and track, and that was it. Then I played rugby, and there were a lot of good rugby players that were DeFi brothers. This guy, Steve Cole, Scott Collins, Tim Hopkins, Tim Riley, a lot of Irish rugby players. And
Kaisai used to have a lot of rugby players. So they still have,
Rob Sharp, I think, successful like private equity guy in New York City. There was a bunch of them. I just don't remember the Kaisai guys as well. But Scott Collins in particular, like he wasn't right off the boat, but I think his parents were like first generation. He was a very like serious Irish person, and he really knew the game of rugby, and he was a fullback. And he said, if you're smart, you'll play behind me for 2 years. I'll teach you everything about the game. And then when you're a sophomore or junior, when you're a junior, you'll start. And I did. And they were really good. And he was a great teacher. And when you're the fullback in rugby, you can kind of control the game. You're the last line of defense, and you can see everything in front of you, and you can call things out. And so I like to be in charge. So it was fun. And
I used to watch, I mean, if I recall, at least when I was there, they played on the field off from the knot. Okay.
Still do. It's amazing they play there, but they do. And I think it's cool. Yeah. It's a cool cultural, it's kind of a odd sport. No one understands the rules, but it's fun. There's a lot of camaraderie.
Try watching Australian rules football. You ever watch that?
It's very similar. But I used to kick. Like the fullback kicks a lot. So you kick for what they call touch. You try to kick the ball and have it hit in bounds and then go out of bounds. And then you get to advance your entire team to where the ball went out of bounds.
Sweet.
That's if it hits in bounds. If it goes directly out, that's directly out, and it comes back to where you kicked it from, and that's no good. So I had to practice that. And I kicked for points, like field goals from all over the field and from as far as 50 meters, which is insane.
Yeah.
But in any event, so you went to Union. You studied the classics or English?
No, I was an American Studies major.
Okay.
Right. Which my joke was, it was the last bastion of the undecided.
Okay.
In that if the course had the word America or American in it, no problem. Part of the major. So economics, I mean, I make a joke with mostly literature or the soft stuff. But for economics, a lot of the economics courses were considered part of the major. Literature, political science. It was a nice blend. I did my thesis on the Black Panther Party, which was a fascinating experience. I thought I could have, back in the day, we really didn't have double majors. It was, you just sort of chose a major and then you took some other stuff. Union at the time, like many other schools to this day, had something called Comp Ed, Comprehensive Education. It might have been the same label when you were there. And it was their attempt in the liberal arts colleges of America to make sure you didn't, you weren't like pre-med and that's all you did, which you might, that would be sometimes in the larger university, you'd be pre-med and that's all science and that's all you learn. So they tried to make sure you had a liberal arts education. So you had to take other courses in engineering and science and music and stuff like that, which I did. I completed all the requirements. I liked American Studies. As it turns out, my lovely bride, my wife of 42 years, was an American Studies major at Skidmore. I did not know her at Skidmore. I saw her at Skidmore. I remember seeing her at the Hub, if you know that bar in Saratoga.
Mhm.
And I was struck by her beauty then. I did not see her again until I met her in New York years and years and years later. She did not know me when I was at Union, which is actually a blessing, because if she had, she would have said, I'm not spending time with that a-hole. Um, but American Studies has actually, I mean, we both tout it as a broad perspective on a number of kind of important sectors of the liberal arts education, not science-based education per se, for careers. She was in the media business, I was in the media business, so it kind of works out.
It's neat. So you, I'm sure we could talk about Union all day long, but at some
Yeah.
point you decided, okay, I'm leaving Schenectady. I'm taking this job. And was it West Virginia right out of college?
West Virginia,
Okay.
Clarksburg, West Virginia, almost heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for 2 years.
How'd they find
Well,
you?
no, yeah. So good question. My parents, I mentioned they were big theatrical. They started their careers in radio. They actually met in a radio station. They were both on-air personalities at a radio station in Lansing, Michigan. My dad was the news director and would deliver the news, and my mother had a children's show, and she would do a home cooking show and interview people in Lansing and stuff like that.
Your mother did a home cooking show? I thought you said she couldn't cook.
No. It gets better. She actually had a TV show in Baltimore when I was a very, very young child. That's the equivalent of Oprah. She had a noonday woman's show where she would have cooks on, with the set, with the flame and the whole thing. She interviewed Ronald Reagan when he was a spokesperson for GE. And I used to see her on the screen as a little tiny boy and like pat the screen and try to talk to her. It was a 12 to 12:30 noonday show in WJZ TV, the same station actually that Oprah got her start on in Baltimore. She was a weather girl. They used to call it weather girl. She was a weather girl in WJZ TV News in Baltimore. Anyway, so my parents moved to a colleague of theirs at the radio station in Lansing, was from Clarksburg, West Virginia. He was recruited by a media company in Clarksburg, and they had stations elsewhere, to come down and start a station in Clarksburg, an AM station. So he said, Bob and Ruth, my parents' name, come on down. So the three of them went down to Clarksburg and started a radio station. And the engineer of the radio station, a guy named John Peters, years later was the general manager of the TV station in Clarksburg. So I get out of Union. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. My parents said, call John Peters. Called him up. He said, yep, we need a sales guy. I packed a suitcase, got in a bus, Greyhound bus, and went down to West Virginia and lived in the basement of my parents' old friends who were still there. He was selling insurance, and the wife was still hanging out. So I lived in their basement for a while until I got an apartment, and then I got promoted to on air and did all that until I left to go to business school. I was there about a little over 2 years.
No kidding. Where'd you go to business school?
2 years. I went to Harvard Business School.
Okay.
It's up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, still accredited. We used to call it, the trade school of Harvard University. The campus is literally across the Charles River, which, goes right through Cambridge and Boston, literally across Charles River from the college. So the undergrads were always like, snooty.
Right.
Oh,
I'm
you're
Harvard
College. You're at the trade school across the river. Ha ha ha. And of course we were all, our earning power was far more than those a-holes who were just, studying poetry or whatever. But it was a fabulous experience. 2 years of full MBA study.
You must have made some interesting friends there.
It was incredible. I will tell you this: the school's changed dramatically. When I got there's a book called "The Gospel According to Harvard Business School," written in 1971, that described a boot camp-like atmosphere where people literally flipped out and were just beaten into submission, and it was horrible. I bought it and read it the night before. I read the whole thing in one night. It was so flipping out. The night before I drove up to go to campus. When I got there, I found out, in fact, it was still that way. It was, they designed the whole first year to scare the living bejesus out of you. How? It was a beautiful, beautiful tactic. First of all, every course you took, no less than 10% would fail, and no more than 10% would get an A. So forced bell curve. So every course you look around, who's going to fail? Because you didn't want to be the failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
A percentage of the class had to flunk out every year. and they didn't give you any grades or any feedback for the first all the way through Christmas.
Oh,
so you were
gosh.
flipping out. We had guys in my class committed suicide.
Oh, no.
We had two nervous breakdowns in my section room. People being escorted out by medical personnel having a nervous breakdown in one of our classes. A faculty member committed suicide during my year. And I'll tell you, I'll finish with this anecdote. One of my classmates, you're in the same room with the same 90 people all year. They have sections, 7 sections of 90 people. Same 90 people. One of my section mates was a guy named John Wing, who flew F-4s in Vietnam. He was a wing commander for F-4 fighter contingent in Vietnam, served in Vietnam. We're sitting in the pub after a really scary week of classes in mid-November before our first set of exams. John Wing, we're sitting there because you go to the pub to drink pitchers of beer and commiserate because your mind is blown, right? He says, he pounds the table and he says, I served in Vietnam. I flew F-4s. I sent men to their death. I flew 71 missions. I've never been more scared than I am now.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and we're like, whoa, dude, you can't say that. You're supposed to be like The Rock. But it was an extraordinarily taxing emotional experience. And they believed back then that that's what toughened you up for corporate life in America or wherever else you go back. My roommate first year was from Japan, spoke very little English. Yutaka Tsukamoto, in case you cared, worked for Nippon Steel. He had a fantastic career in Nippon Steel. But anyway, second year they were kind of touching, patting your head and saying, "Oh, you're going to work at McKinsey, you'll hire us. You're going to go be a CEO at a corporation, you'll hire us as consultants." So it was yin yang. First year was hell. Second year was sort of, "Oh, you're perfect, you're perfect, you're perfect." A very odd experience. Now it's very collegial, very collaborative. They have far less academic work, far less reading. They have teams and they fly around. It's a whole different world now.
I've heard that.
I'm not sure which is right, by the way. I can tell you this. I mean, this sounds like, the old curmudgeon saying, when I was your age, we walked to school 2 miles in the snow each day kind of thing. But people from my years, and to your earlier point, I met amazing people. People from my time there, when we go back, I just went back from my reunion, my long reunion. We look around and we're like, this is ridiculously cushy and easy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I lived at my dorm room was like a gulag prison. The only source of heat in my dorm room, this was in Boston, the only source of heat in my dorm room was the hot water pipe that ran up from the floor to the ceiling for the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
Only source of heat. So I had to sleep kind of around the pipe. It was like a prison. It was a prison cell.
My gosh.
I'm not kidding. It was crazy. Anyway, toughen me up.
No doubt. So, what'd you do after that? So I know you were in media for a while, but it didn't last forever.
I went to work for Home Box Office in New York, which back then, this is 1980, very hip company, kind of, changing TV. True story. When the interviewers would come to campus for second year, all the big companies and all the consulting firms, HBO came up. And at the time on my resume, kind of just for shits and giggles, I had in the bottom part, like other interests or whatever, I had the fact that I cleaned cages in the Baltimore Zoo, one of my summer jobs growing up. A quick sidebar. My parents felt strongly I should have horrible summer jobs, which I did, to make sure that I knew that I would never want to do something like that for a career, right? So one of my summer jobs is I cleaned cages in the Baltimore Zoo. And I literally got bear shit all over me. It was a horrible job. Anyway, so I had that in my resume. The guy from HBO shows up. He takes my resume and he goes, "You clean cages in a zoo?" So we spent like the whole half an hour talking about how you could tell when the bear was sick because the shit would be runny, or other really the whole time we talking about zoo and shit, bear cleaning cages and tigers and everything. I found out later. It's a true story. I found out later he goes back. And they would have people go visit Wharton, University of Pennsylvania, Stanford out west, and Harvard, 3 schools they went to. And they would discuss who they wanted to invite down for a second round of interviews to potentially be hired. And this guy who interviewed me, he was the head of finance. He says, I met a guy that literally shoveled shit for a living. And if he can do that, I know he can be successful here. So I got sent down to New York. I did the whole thing, interviews, and I got a job at HBO in finance, which I wasn't very good at. But HBO was a fantastic environment. It was just a crazy time. TV, it was growing like a weed. We were hitting our annual budgets in March. We were part of Time Incorporated, which was a traditional print media company. We were the kind of the crazy guys off to the side doing wacky stuff. So I tell people HBO was the sort of the AOL of the internet of its time in 1980. I worked later for AOL. So I was like, I had two experiences like that of changing a whole environment with the leading brand in it. But it was a hell of a lot of fun.
So who was your rabbi mentor at HBO? Who'd you really connect with?
It's funny you say that. He's dead. His name was Tony Cox. He was head of sales and marketing. I ended up leaving finance and going to sales and marketing. I was on the launch team of Cinemax. We launched Cinemax, and I was, I helped launch that channel. And I was head of new business development for the marketing team. So I was doing new stuff, new, which being in a new company, doing the new stuff in a new company that was hyper growth, it was, we're just making it up. We're trying new stuff, right? Very, very, the encouragement to try new stuff was very, very strong. And Tony was our guy. He was head of all sales and marketing. They had three people ran the company. Tony, a guy named Michael Fuchs, who went to Union College, believe it or not, but never took care of me. And then a guy named Frank Biondi, who was sort of the programming, business, and sales and marketing. Three people ran the company. And Tony was he was inspirational. He mentored basically all of us. He was a hard partier, big time hard partier. This is back in 1980, 81, 82, 83. Slept with everybody, even though he was happily married. He wasn't a mentor in I didn't want to imitate his life, but as a business person, he was. You just look at him and you go like, I want to have that skill set. That guy can get done what he needs to get done, both on the negative side, motivating people with energy and sometimes punishment and aggressive stuff, and also motivating people from aspirational side, from sort of a leadership perspective, representing the company externally. He was handsome, he was savvy, he went to Princeton, Harvard Business School. This dude was top shelf. And AOL, by the way, HBO, by the way, hired nothing but MBAs from those three schools. So you were swimming in people that had been basically, preened and padded as being the elite, right? So it was you were kind of like, wow, I'm in the deep water. This is serious shit. So it wasn't like you were joining a company where you were like, well, I went to Harvard Business School, so I stand out. We were all that way. So it was a really very challenging environment, and Tony was a tremendous sort of goalpost to pursue.
Interesting.
He left and became CEO of Showtime, which at the time I was long gone from HBO, but at the time was like a huge, that's like that's like the head of GM going to Ford. It was just a huge deal in pay television and that sector of entertainment for Tony to leave HBO and to go run Showtime. We were absolutely tooth and nail competitors.
Treason.
Treason was one word that was bandied around.
So then did you go direct to Time Warner or to AOL from HBO or?
No, I started my entrepreneurial curve there. I left HBO in 84, and with a partner, I started a company called Sachs Walsh. His name was Sachs. My name was Walsh. We did marketing for cable companies, mostly database. We would actually incredibly, I'm kind of proud of this. We figured out a way. First of all, when cable companies got the right to wire a city, remember the coaxial cable going in the back of your TV? When a cable company like Cox or Comcast or whatever the local cable operator was, they got the rights to wire your city. They were basically really dumb businessmen. And I say that not respectfully. A lot of times these were really dumb businessmen that just got a franchise. So they'd wire the city. They had no idea what addresses they'd wired. Their data was incredibly messy. Their billing systems are horrible. It was just the business succeeded in spite of them. And they just got a satellite dish. They got HBO and other channels, and they sent it out to cable to your TV with very clear signal, obviously. So we formed a database company, and we used a company called RL Polk that had address data for all of America. It was the best database coming out there, and we would take the billing tapes of the cable company and map the farthest out address on each street in the city, and formed an address map of the cable system for all of their addresses in the cable system purview, and then do a purge of their subscriber base. So we knew the addresses and the demographics of who were not their subscribers. So we would help them market to their non-subscribers, which I never knew how to do. Then we'd had demographics of who had a family with kids under 6. We'd send them a Disney Channel perspective. It was database marketing long before there was such a thing as database marketing. We had a good arc. My partner and I had an argument, and we split up. He bought me out, and that's when I got into the internet business in 1986. I got in. It was before it was known as the internet. I got into what was called the online business with a company called CompuCard. And we were the online shopping. We were the e-commerce platform for all of the online services back then, which was AOL, Genie, Prodigy, CompuServe, and a host of others. So we were a white label e-commerce service for all of those platforms. And then I went to AOL. Actually, forgive me. I had a short stop working for the General Electric Company, which for us Schenectadians is an important brand to mention. I worked for GE. I was hired to run a division of GE that ran Genie, which was a competitor to AOL. I had my moments with Jack Welch. I interacted with Jack a number of times. Fabulous, memorable moments with Jack Welch. But then I went on to AOL and never looked back.
So during this is a little bit of an aside. So during this, were you involved in politics at all at that point? Did you know
No.
political people, or were you just working? And by the way, if you don't mind my asking, were you raised in like a conservative household or liberal, or because you've been quite prominent in politics, and I feel like we should discuss it.
Okay. So I was raised in a super duper Democratic household. My parents were both members of the Maryland Democratic Party. I would go to smoke-filled rooms on election night to tally at the Maryland Democratic Club. I would lick envelopes for Hubert Humphrey's candidacy for president in 1968. I would knock on doors for George McGovern. I was so as a young person from 4 to 18, my parents had me very engaged in what they believed were important Democratic races, both national and state. And I met a lot of politicians because my parents were very involved. So I met all the Maryland governors, all the Maryland Congress people, all the Maryland senators were friends of my parents. If they were Democrats, if they're Republicans, they screw them. We're not going to talk to them. So then I had a hiatus.
Is that even true back then? Is that even true?
No. They were respectful. They just didn't. First of all, they didn't give money. They didn't work in the campaign. So the Congress people and governors and senators, and actually, my parents were very good friends with Hubert Humphrey. They kept in touch with my parents because my parents they were engaged. They would help fundraise. They would do all that stuff. Republican candidates didn't care about them, so it wasn't like we were like, what a jerk. How I'm never talking to that guy. No, it was far more respectful back then. I hate to say that's gone, but so then I had a hiatus called college, business school, business career. But after my business career, where I had, to be perfectly blunt, enough success where I could become a big donor to campaigns, magically, I know this may shock you, magically politicians discovered me. So the first one I met was Bill Clinton, who was, as they say, coin operated. And President Clinton President Clinton and his main guy, Terry McAuliffe,
you're good friends to this day with them, are you not?
To this day. I just got a note from Terry, as a matter of fact. He calls me every year on my birthday. It's always very cute. But Terry figured out that I was able to write big checks to Bill Clinton. So I got very engaged with that presidency and that administration, or I should say the end of it. And then was helping Al Gore in his campaign. And if Al Gore said, when I win, you'll be the ambassador to Ireland, which would have been great because it's a great gig, incredible house, and a pretty easy lift. but obviously he was not sworn in 2001. But yeah, that was really the hiatus was education and business until I had enough capital, to be blunt, where I could toss out a check, in some cases pretty significant checks, to either specific candidates or the party or PACs, and that buys you. Again, I say coin operated. Politics is coin operated, but that kind of money buys you access to all sorts of stuff. Like at the convention, I'd be up in the special booths and all that shit.
You must have met so many interesting people over the years.
I mean, and listen, Bill Clinton's number one. I played golf with him twice. I played golf with him when he was president, played golf when he wasn't. I was invited to Camp David for the last weekend of the Clinton presidency for a whole weekend party to celebrate his 8 years, which included me and my wife in the movie theater in Camp David with Don Henley of the Eagles and Bill and Hillary Clinton watching a movie at 1 o'clock in the morning with Bill and Hillary, being snuggly. I'm like, they obviously love each other because they don't need to impress me or Polly or Don Henley. We're all bought in. But oddly, that night, we finished the movie. We're sitting around watching the movie, drinking beer, shooting the shit, chuckling. Movie's over. It's like 1:30 at night. President Clinton gets up and he says, he goes, "I got work to do." And I said, "Mr. President, it's like 1:30 in the morning." He says, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead." So he goes upstairs. If you recall, remember he pardoned Mark Rich?
Yes.
The financier. He pardoned that night. He went upstairs and signed the pardon, one of his last acts as president. That night, one that was incredibly controversial. He obviously had, some would argue, a personal relationship with Denise Rich, Mark's wife, amongst other personal relationships President Clinton had in his time. And if I'd known, I would have grabbed the pen out of his hand because it was a horrible way to finish his 8 years. But it was that night in Camp David.
Ironically, I just read a book called The World for Sale, which you would probably love. It's all about commodities traders, and Mark Rich he's the biggest. It's amazing.
He was a brand.
Amazing.
Yeah.
They sort of ignored governments for many, many years. Didn't matter. There's so much interesting stuff in that book. You would love it.
I'm going to check it out. I'll do the Kindle search.
I'll send it to you. You read it on the Kindle?
I'm a Kindle guy, yeah.
Okay.
Are you?
No, I read hardcover books. I was going to send you one, but if you're going to read it on the Kindle.
Yeah, don't. I appreciate it. But
I'll send you the name of it, though. But so my Bill Clinton story isn't about me at all. I mean, I've met him numerous times through Terry McAuliffe and his best friend, Duke Kenny from Syracuse, New York, who's a close friend of mine. But there was a lobbyist in Albany. He was a Republican, and his name was Don Clary. And Don had worked in the first Bush White House. And he went to a retirement party for, as he told it, for a U.S. Marshal that was from Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken. And Bill Clinton was governor of Arkansas at the time, and he came to the retirement party. And so my friend Don was the last person at the party, and he's trying to get a ride home using the host's telephone. And Bill Clinton is there, and he says, "Do you need a ride somewhere?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Where do you live?" And he said, "What, Georgetown," or whatever he said. And Bill Clinton said, "Well, I have a driver. I'll take you to where you live." And so the two of them left the brownstone. They got in the car. And Bill Clinton said, "Where are you from, Don?" And he told him. And he said, "Are you married or single?" And he told him. He said, "Got any kids?" And he told him, and so on and so forth. So he asked him like 20 questions. So fast forward 8 years or thereabouts. And Don walked up to Bill Clinton at some gathering in Washington. And he said, "Mr. President, I doubt you would remember me, but my name is Don Clary." He's like, "I remember you, Don." He said, "I gave you a ride home. You're married to Kim and you have a son, so-and-so." He just regurgitated the conversation right back to him 8 years later. Is that amazing or what?
Oh, dude, that's a really good one, but there are thousands of stories like that. And I've got ones like that for me. The guy, I wish there was, you're good. You have a tremendous memory and
not
you
like
use
that.
it in business. Well, right. But yours varsity level.
College, it'd be better.
Right. I mean, he's off on the start, but you're varsity level. But I'll tell you, and I know you practice this, but I have met people that practice that to get good at it. I think he was just built. He just
I
was
do
born with
too.
it. Yeah.
I don't think you can practice that. Like it's
No.
almost like verbatim. Like he just said it. And I'm so impressed with that. And the other thing is the times I have met him with Duke and Terry, and I met him at Duke's house. Duke Kenyon, when Hillary was running for senator, I think, the first time they went to, because Terry McAuliffe is from Syracuse. And
Right.
that was one of their first fundraisers in Syracuse. And when I was in his presence, even if it was only 60 seconds, I felt like the sun was shining on me. It was the energy when he is focused on a person is just, it's amazing. It's
So
superhuman.
that was his gift, and that was his curse.
Mm.
Because I'm sure there were many versions of this, but a group would get booked to go see the president to plead their case to him when he was president. Like Native Americans would have an appointment with the president to talk about, the reservations and specific like energy rights that they were trying to negotiate to have a portion of as they were drilling and stuff like that. So they would go in and plead their case. And Bill Clinton would say, I feel your pain. I understand completely where you're coming from. I think that makes a ton of sense. And they would leave and they go out and be
Thinking
interviewed.
that they won.
They won. They go out and be interviewed by ABC on the White House lawn about this issue. Oh, yeah. And then the next, then the oil companies would come in and Bill would say, and people, he appeared so agreeable because he understood. He really did. He did feel their pain. He was incredible.
He was empathetic. In the,
unbelievable.
In the
and I don't. I mean, obviously, he used it with women. He hit my wife a number of times, and which I considered flattery. But then later I saw who else he hit on. I was like, well, whatever. You can fog a mirror. But he. Here's a quick one. We were playing golf. You see, this would have been the second time. It was me and Terry McAuliffe. Terry played with us both times, and a guy named Steve Ricchetti, who was actually Joe Biden's chief of staff for many, many years. And at the turn, I rode with the president for all 36 holes. He and I were partners against Terry and Steve and this other guy. Anyway, at the turn, we're getting a sandwich and stuff. This is the Army Navy Club in Virginia, and the president says, "Hey, Mark, can I borrow your cell phone?" And I said, "Certainly, Mr. President." He takes it, pops it open, boop, 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 boop. And he starts talking and he goes, "Oh, hi. Yeah, I know I left New York early. I'm still tired. I got up so early, but I'm playing golf with friends." And he gestures to us and he starts walking off. And Steve Ricchetti looks at me and he goes, "I'll bet that's not Mrs. Clinton on the telephone." I should have saved the goddamn number. But yeah, he remembered, to your point, he remembers so much. He remembers so much about me that when I see him, I almost like, I like kind of jump ahead, like, "Mr. President, don't brag about how much you remember me. Let's talk about what's going on right now," because it's he almost can't help himself. He just comes out. It's like a recording. Anyway, amazing guy. I mean, I just to finish, I got a D in my sweater, so I'm attuned to Democratic candidates. The person who I thought had as much, in a much different way, charisma as him was Barack Obama. I don't know if you've interviewed or interacted with Barack Obama at all. Obviously, completely different kind of menu of appeal versus Clinton, who just embraces you. He takes over the room and embraces you with his personality. Barack Obama is far different and icier, but has an appeal, in my opinion. I mean, many people hate his guts, but he has an appeal that is in the same, I would argue, in the same tier.
Interesting. I've never met him, so I don't know. But he's much sort of cooler.
Icy. Yeah, it's not
friendly, jovial. Not unfriendly, but not.
No, he has a sense of humor for sure. It's just
he's aloof a little bit.
I think aloof is the right word. He's aloof.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things, the reason that I feel safe, by the way, bringing politics up with you is because you have so many friends that are conservative, even though you're
I do.
very
I do.
liberal, and you deal with it with an elegance that and a dignity that, I think it's important. And,
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
a good friend of mine, this is a personal story, this is going to be, we're going to run this. Okay. But a good friend of mine sent me a note last week that he was parsing his relationships and trying to decide who he was going to spend time with and who not. And I had quoted someone who was on TV, just quoted them, said they said this. I didn't say it. They said it. And he said, you said this, and this is a right-wing talking point, and therefore I think we should pause our relationship. And I said, I'm okay with that. It was an email, and I responded in the email, and I said, I'm okay with that. I said, but you may misunderstand me because I'm a social liberal and a fiscal conservative. So you and I are so closely aligned. You own a giant business. You love your employees. You want to minimize your exposure to taxes and risk and all that stuff. We're very closely aligned. And I said, there's a possibility you misunderstand me. If you want to forsake me and our relationship, there's nothing I can do about that. But I feel like we should at least discuss it. And he came around. He's like, you're right. We should discuss it. And it was fine. But it made me it alarmed me. I was like, man, I'm guessing he wrote 10 of those letters. I'm thinking I'm not the only one. He said, I've been sitting around thinking I have limited time and I want to spend it with people essentially on the same team. And I think it's so risky. And I always admire about you is you're very good at navigating that, and you don't get offended about anything. And neither do I at this point. I'm just not gonna.
I appreciate you
get
saying
offended.
I think you and I both have thick skin, which life tends to develop. Yeah, you try.
I get hurt too, but I try to not take it personally, for sure.
I try. Sometimes I do. I think back. I was a young person when Vietnam was raging, and many dinner tables were split forever. Hawk Dove, that way. I think obviously 1861 or 1858. Horrible time to think about, but similar. I fear for our nation. I don't see a good end to the current schism. But I will say this: the person who wrote you that email, I spell time with capital letters, brother. I time is the only gift we have, only gift we have, and it disappears as second by second. You've echoed this back to me in the exact same way. I think you and I cherish time.
We do. And when I'm in DC, I'm looking for you.
Say, well, right. To reach out and say, I'm parsing my life, or whatever term you use, I'm not there. Sometimes I feel like I'm close, but I'm not there. And certainly I would never send out an email saying basically, go pound sand.
I feel like we need each other. Like, I need people who are of a different opinion than I am. Like, I'm so self-absorbed at times that I need other people to help me to see what I'm not seeing. And the fact that we're afraid of that now is what terrifies me. Like, I feel really close to this guy that I got the email from.
Wow.
I may never see him again. It's okay, but it's just really alarmed me. Well, I don't have so many friends that I'm willing to just let them go by the wayside and not respond to something like that.
We started about this conversation talking about media, and let's return to it. I mean, 1972, 3 networks, 3 national news anchors, 1 or 2 major newspapers in your city, smaller cities, maybe 1. That's it. So your sources of news, the breadth of your news, the ability to discover news sources that agreed with you and only you, or that you could, that wasn't there. Now, so many people, I find myself sometimes doing this exact thing, search out sources of information that agree with what I already think. And that didn't used to be the case. It's horrible.
Mm-hmm. So, when you think in terms of your current business life, how are you staying busy? What are you into these days?
So I have a venture capital fund that I have a partner. He's a mergers and acquisitions lawyer who I've known a long time, and he and I run it. It's a small firm. It's a small venture fund. Um, not a whole lot of capital, but we do angel invest, basically seed investing they call it, which are smaller checks. 250 to 500, sometimes a little less. At pretty early, very early startups. We've done about, I've done about over my life, in the last 15, 20 years, I've done about 40 deals. But since my partner and I joined together, we've done about 9 deals. Spent a lot of time, and I'm a board member of 2 of the companies. 2 of them we like a whole lot. 3 of them we feel pretty good about. And the rest may be walking dead, as they say in the venture business. I'm on a bunch of not-for-profit boards that I'm really engaged with. I'm still on the board of the Bipartisan Policy Center, which is a think tank in Washington, D.C. And to your point, the word bipartisan ain't that popular these days, but I'm the longest serving board member. I joined in, I guess, 2008. So I've had, to your point on exposure, I mean, the board of directors is incredible. R's and
What's
D's.
it called?
The Bipartisan Policy Center, BPC. Fabulous. I'm on the board of an institution called the 1921 Institute. 1921 was the year in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they burned down a whole section of the city called Black Wall Street. 1921 is about getting capital into the hands of African-American venture capital funds that are run by African-Americans. So they have more access to capital for both African-American founded companies, but Caucasian or whatever, Latina. But it's just to get access to capital to an audience that typically is not there. And it's a fascinating experience. I'm still very engaged in unions board, although I'm ex officio, which is Latin for nobody gives a shit, just so you know. As I said, I'm forgotten but not gone, which is which is an interesting place to be. We have a new president coming in. I'm interested to meet with her and hear what her perspective is. And I'm on a bunch of other, I won't bore you, but I'm on a bunch of other not-for-profit boards that I find, that they listen to me. So that's always impressive. But and then I now have 5 grandchildren. My daughter, who went to Union College, class of 2011, has 3. They live in Little Rock, Arkansas. We just bought a house in Little Rock to be near them. And my son, who lives in Manhattan, is married with two grandsons. So that I must admit, I don't know where you are and your guests you talk to are, but it consumes more of my brain than I thought. But gladly consumes more of my brain than I thought. I really enjoy being a grandfather.
That's great. I think this is going to test me, but is your daughter named Melissa?
Correct. Good call.
Yes. She babysat for my girls at one point.
Yes.
I don't know if you would remember that, but that was.
So she would. She babysat for what's his name? Who was our head of fundraising? Tom Gutenberger. She babysat for the Gutenberger. She babysat for you. She babysat for a couple of others. She was a Delta. Can we help you? And she loved Union. She and I are in the same cycle in that, I'm coming up in my 50th. I'm an old fart, and she's coming up on her 15th, I think. So it's fun to be in the same cycle as your child.
I'm assuming you'll come back.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I just, they do a website where people post their life, and it's interesting. I went ahead and filled it out quickly. I pretty much am a Spartan. It's just, I have very little data about myself and a couple of pictures. Some people really go to town. I mean, I'm talking, like 2 pages of, and then I moved to Cuyahoga, and then I work for like, okay, calm down. But it's interesting to see the perspective. And I also, it's interesting to see who hasn't bothered to update. I have found, I don't know what your experience has been for Harvard Business School. As I say, I just went back to my 45th reunion. I hate to say it, but there seems to be a bright shining line in uh, reunion attendance, at least for business school, and I think it's true for college as well. For those people that are proud of their life or embarrassed by their life, right? Which is human nature. I get it, but it's interesting to see in the case of my class. There's some people in my class that are remarkably successful in their economic and business career, but have not posted anything. They haven't signed up. Now, maybe they're busy or whatever. But their union's pretty hard outreach, saying sign in, tell people what you're up to, and stuff like that. So I'll be interested to see prior to the actual event when we all show up on campus how active people are and what kind of people end up sort of sharing their lives and perspective.
So I'm going to offer something. You've done a lot for me. You've been to my house, like back in the woods. We had my 35th or 40th, I can't remember, class reunion last year or the year before. And I had the Friday night thing when everyone's showing up at different times. I had that at my house. So if you have any interest at all, I'm going to take some pictures so you remember it. But if you have any interest at all, we could have it here. Like even if there's 100 people, it's a huge patio and there's plenty of room.
With the little lake and the pond and everything. Yeah.
Yes.
No,
and the reason I say that is because union is going to relegate most of us to some space that's not fitting, and that's kind of how I felt. And so my class is just, we're going to Pat's from now on. And the two
I'm
ladies.
Jealous.
Yeah,
I'm
but
jealous.
I'm offering it to you guys. So if you want to bring it up, I think it'd be great. It'd be great for me. I'm connected to the school still. It'd be great.
You may regret it, but I appreciate that. That could really,
could be nice.
Because I agree. I mean, the campus is beautiful, but they don't. A lot of times, the places they put you, you're kind of like, what's up with that?
You're in Old Chapel and it's dark at 3:00. It's like it's they need to paint that place.
I mean, seriously, you think back, we used to have parties there with black lights and stuff. It was always dark. It was always dark in Old Chapel.
Yes, it's dark in there. It's funny. It's a Gothic, but it's a beautiful campus, but
beautiful.
Need some paint.
Yeah.
So you've had, like, by any measure, super interesting career, super interesting life, rich family life, rich friendships. When you look back on your life, like, not that you would do anything differently. Did it turn out the way you thought it would? Like, how is it compared to what you thought it would be? If you thought it would be.
Well, I'll criticize myself. I believe, look, I don't know if I would be diagnosed as ADHD or ADD, but I'm probably somewhere on that spectrum. And I was the luckiest person I know to have had a career, the internet. I mean, cable TV with HBO and then basically the internet, a career where the environment I was in was so highly change oriented that I didn't need to get good at I mean, I could just keep reinventing what I was supposedly good at and kept my responsibility and my compensation and my number of employees and all those yardsticks kept going north because the industry I was in frankly rewarded ADD.
Right.
So I'm the luckiest guy I know in my business career for that, number one. Number two, I'm the luckiest guy I know to have found a woman and married her that kept my worst instincts at bay. And then I'm the luckiest guy I know to have, frankly, used some of the capital that I acquired to get access to people and places and experiences that I'll cherish forever. So, it's a fair final question. Would I change anything? Of course. I mean, we all have regrets. But in the silos of kind of major features of your life as you look back, if I died tonight, I wouldn't relive dark times and say woulda, coulda, shoulda. I will say that the old, they always say no one on their deathbed says, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time with my kids. I went to my son played lacrosse in college. I went to every game home and away for all 4 years. So stuff like that is cherished. So I'm I feel very, very lucky.
And one last question. If I were talking in your absence, say you're deceased or you're no longer here, and I was talking to someone else about you, what would that person want to know? What would you want them to know about Mark Walsh if you had to sum yourself up?
I think I was extraordinary. I would argue that I spent a lot of time and energy, quality time and energy, discovering, adopting, and helping grow the new in entertainment and media, the new in interactive communication, the new in how businesses deal with each other with the company Vertical Net, the new in how politics operated and communicated with constituents, and to some extent the new of how policies are enacted through my efforts in the not-for-profit arena. That sounds a little glib. I don't mean it to be so, but I very much am attracted to the new, and I think I've had a pretty decent record of finding, adopting, sort of constructing, scaling how the new is deployed and woven into our lives.
No doubt. Like you described it as a diagnosis, but you have a skill set that's, maybe some of it's biology. I don't know. Of course it is. It's all part of us, but you definitely honed it as well. You're constantly getting better. But what I was hoping you would say is more about these enduring friendships and how you bring people together from disparate constituencies. And I just think that's really important, especially at a time like this. And
Well,
that's how I remember you.
well, I guilty as charged. I do think I won't name them, but I'll tell you, there were times when I was chair of Union College's board in board meetings. Some of those you were sitting in the room, some of those you weren't, where I was like, how do I not run over and choke that son of a bitch for like completely trying to just take our conversation off the goddamn rails? Forgive my language. And to, in an organization where you're chairing the meeting and stuff, to try and keep consensus, that taught me a lot in interpersonal interaction outside of a structured boardroom.
No doubt.
Just keeping people together, looking at each other with open eyes. All too rare, sadly, today.
No doubt. But we're not giving up. You and
Never.
me. Maybe we'll be the last two, but that's okay.
we'll be in your back deck looking out at the water.
Amen. Well, thank you for your time. Is there anything I'm leaving out? Anything you might like to ask or say before we wrap up?
So I will say this. I mentioned it before. I speak a lot to law schools and business schools, still asked. I'm going down to UVA Law School next week, and I give an annual talk there to the third year law students at UVA Law School, and it's fascinating. And I said it earlier, spell time with capital letters. It is, there are two things that I've told those people on the table over again. It continues to amaze me at how many people let fear stop them in life. Number one, fear of being embarrassed, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear. Oh, it's incredible to me how it holds it back. And then the other is allocating the few hours we have on this goddamn planet in ways that aren't productive to them personally or professionally. Look, I've wasted time too. I watch stupid shows. I do what, but just the consciousness of time and the resistance to fear. If I could put those two features in somebody's brain, I would say those are the two things I would impart to anybody.
Yeah. I would, for me, add, not that my opinion's called for, but purpose. I think that's kind of what you're saying too. Like, have something that matters and then work hard. And it's supposed to be unbearably hard, and right when we're ready to quit, then it gets a little easier and we can roll the rock a little further. And we don't want it to roll down the other side, because once it does, it's over. So
I know we're at the end, but I got to tell you, do you ever listen to Scott Galloway? Do you care about that guy?
I don't know
That ring
who
a
it
bell?
is. I'm sorry.
Check him out. He's a professor at NYU Business School, Stern School.
Okay.
He's got a bunch of podcasts and everything, and he has a great. I'll send you the link on YouTube. Just do
Thank
Scott
you.
Galloway and follow your passion. He does a diatribe on this phrase, follow your passion. He's talking to a bunch of MBA students in a videotaped address to Stern Business School. Follow your passion. And he's like, that is the stupidest phrase
I agree.
because you don't really know.
Mm-mm.
If you hopefully you find something. I found something I'm interested in because it's ever changing. So
Yes.
is that my passion? I don't know. I got plenty of passion, but this it almost causes shame. To your point on shame and fear, it almost causes people to be shameful that they're not following their passion.
Yep.
Hey,
But
wake up and try to make a difference every goddamn day. That's the passion we should be following.
so, as you know, I go to AA meetings, and one thing they say in AA is if you want self-esteem, you have to perform estimable acts, meaning contributions into society or someone else's life or whatever. And that makes you feel good. It doesn't matter to me if it's giving $50 to someone who has no money and needs money to eat, or if you're going to be on a charity, or if you're just talking to a friend in need rather than worrying about my own stuff. And I just feel like we need purpose. We need to push that rock. And that's where, for me at least, when I push the rock, that's when things are revealed to me. That's when I find my passion. Like
Bro, you get the last word. You get the last word because it's your show, but you get the last word because that I think is a great way to wrap it up. I agree with you.
Thank you. But my old boss used to say, you don't get inspiration sitting on the couch. You have to go out and do stuff. And activity begets emotion is what he used to say. That's
I agree
all
with
I got. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's great to see you. I'm going to be in DC soon, but I'm also going to email you about your reunion because we have, I don't know, we got 6 months to plan it, 8 months to plan it if you want to do it.
You the man, Pat. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you set this up, and I was honored to be your guest.
Thank you so much. Oh, you went away. If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.